My name is Dim and I'm currently a senior studying advertising, and I chose advertising because I really like what they teach and how multifaceted it is. It's not teaching me a specific one thing, but it is using tools, media, etc. to be able to use that as a storytelling method for a diverse audience or anything practically. Over the summer, it kind of started as research first. So I kind of scourged through just finding more of like any academic field, like PhD research thesis made regarding just sexual violence in Myanmar particularly. And so I think after reading so much, it took me a little bit of time, and also took me kind of like mentally, it was like, oh my gosh, I need to take a break. So it was a lot of like go, stop, reflect. And after that, I kind of hit a wall and I'm like, now what do I do? You know, like I think there's so much than compared to just doing by research and understanding and knowing, like what do I do and how can I use these research already done, but then connect it to what's the current issue in my community or in these type of communities, right? How do we bridge these gap of like, they're not researcher, they're not gonna go on the internet and read all these documents. So it's like, how can I convey all this research, all this knowledge in a most efficient way? I think I was like going on a walk with my best friend and my partner. I'm like, okay, like what is the insight, or like what is the truth, you know, or what is something that I can kind of lower it down. And once I finally did, which was that, let's say, unprocessed emotions of people who go through certain war or certain trauma, if it's not resolved or if it's not talked through, I think it gets passed down to the children, and that kind of keeps continuously happening. And so that was kind of the problem. It's like, how do we interject that? How do we stop that? And it kind of becomes this culture, right? So we were like, okay, that's it. I brought on a team of like another art director and some other students who were initially on the project. And so we were kind of working towards that of what type of media, what type of thing can we produce to be able to tell a story, to be able to invoke people to talk more about this subject, which was a big thing that like my professor David mentioned. Like, I think if people talk about this topic, I think it's the best way to move forward. And so how do we even get people to talk about it? And so we were looking through a bunch of media. We were even talking so much about shows, like TV shows, and especially Everything Everywhere All at Once. We showed it to a lot of professors and see what they think, who've been in the field, who created advertisement. And so it was such a weird, like, felt like it was kind of documentary, but then not. It was like an ad. Like, how do we speak in the like a frame of like being able to have our audience be like, oh, that's me, or like I know what they're saying. So the end product is a short film video of a mother and daughter breaking silence, and breaking silence in the term of the trauma that they both endured, or the topic that they don't, you know, usually talk about with each other. And they're both sitting in the car, and they're both sitting very uncomfortably, but the daughter mentions, like, you know, that she's been abused, and the daughter being able to finally tell her story to her mom. Her mom opens up and reveals her own story, right, that she's never talked about, that she's never mentioned to her daughter. And through this ability to be able to talk to each other just from women to women, not just beyond just being like, you're my mom, you're my daughter, they were able to see each other just as a person. And I think from that moment, it created such a bond and a healing, or at least an awareness of, wow, like it wasn't just me. And you know, the intention behind this video is that hopefully if people see it, they're not alone. And I think being able to know is the first step to being able to prevent it from happening, or to be able to, or creating more prevention around this topic. Yeah, and I think the biggest important part, I felt like all of that was the connection to colonialism, and how much the mom's story, you know, she didn't have a choice. It was going through a civil war, and there was no other option for her other than to get married. Even though, you know, she was going through an arranged marriage and she didn't want that, she tried to flee, but you know, the the economy wasn't good, all that stuff, and so she was the only other option was to marry, and that not having a choice, I think, really created this type of life. I am a refugee from Myanmar, and so that is like a big component to my story and my identity. And so, but kind of the history of Myanmar is kind of crazy and very intricate. So initially, it was one with India. Burma is what it was called back in that time, and at that time it was colonized by the British, and then also had Japanese occupations in there. And so when India got their independence, Burma was then created as a country. When they were able to get independence from British, the current military who is taking over our country currently, Myanmar, was able to, get annex British from that. And so, but in order to do so, I believe it developed all these tactics and all these type of action, and now is harming the current community, harming citizens. And a big component that I found through that history was that they used sexual violence as a weapon of war towards women. And that type of tool was learned and is currently being done to Myanmar citizens by the military regime of Myanmar. And so personally, I have experienced sexual violence in my life, and I do believe that these are the intergenerational trauma, that it was inheritance by community, etc. This was me trying to understand the intersectionality of all these stuff. And so these are all like really big components of like my life story and why this kind of story I really wanted to tell. And they're so intertwined. They're not just like one singular thing. It's colonialism, religion, language, faith that all came into one, but also in the expense of women being harmed. Project goals that we intended is to be able to use our short film, our media, to create more awareness or to create conversation within communities and be able to have communities talk about this topic, about sexual violence, and then also the broader audience, which is a lot of us feel like we've been through things alone, but we're not, and I think that we might feel so alone in our own experiences in our life, but if we talk, we can probably find out there's so much actually other people who are experiencing this. And I think the statistic was that I think 2 in 5 of children in America experience sexual violence. We're hoping, we're able to translate this into different languages so other communities are able to see it. So that is like something that I want to look forward to, and the goal as well is just to create more awareness, to create and being able to see not just sexual violence, but how it is so culturally and also systematically created through colonialism. So what's happening next with the project is, since we're done right now, we're hoping to do some group testings. So we're having professors, AD students and non-AD students watch the film, and we do some questionnaire hoping to see that if they got the message of the story that we're trying to tell, and if they do, then we move forward. If not, then we do a little bit more editing and revision, and then we'll do that process over again. But our advisor, who is David Karanda, he is a senior researcher with UNESCO, so he's hoping to bring this to his supervisor and being able to bring this for the conferences for UNESCO and show the film and be able to spread it out more widely than just here at the University of Oregon. The undergraduate research fellowship is really important, or STEAM fellowship is really important for students here at the University of Oregon, because there's no other one like it, I would say. I mean, this has given me kind of this like reach and kind of this ability to do what I want in an academic setting that wasn't able to be provided for me. I mean, where can I go to get funding like this, to do this like really like innovative, I would say? It's not something that like, it's like, oh, like this and this and that. It was more of like exploration, and I think it's going to do so much great work, and being able to now use this creative work that I've built by your guys' funding to get ahead in my career, to show work, or to be able to have other communities and other people see how much fundings can help students create really good work. A key moment that stood out to me from this funding was being able to turn my drawings into animation. I think that was freaking cool. I was like, wow, like using AI currently, we used Flow, which is Google Gemini's. Flow is one of their programs, and we were just drawing, and then being able to do like 3D models out of them, I think it opened my eyes. I was like, okay, like we're making an animation. Like, yes, it's not like the best animation that can be done, but we're students and we don't have a crazy budget. And so I think that was so fun, like being able to experiment and using the funding was crazy. And being able to spend time just talking about topics that that doesn't get taught here, right? That isn't as explored. So like having that much funding I feel like I could spend so much time on it, and I did, and it created such a really good work that I'm able to be so proud of now. I was like, I want to go into advertising because I want to tell a perspective of people who have been colonized, because I do think there's a lot of like the mainstream narrative is of the colonizees, you know, the winners of colonization, and they tell the story of X, Y, and Z, but it's not the truth, you know? It's not that, oh, they just need to get over it. They're just not you know, it's not that. It's that we're also in grasp with of what happened, and it's hard, you know, it's hard, and it is not just a physical overtaking, it's a mental overtaking. It's cultures changing because of colonialism. And so I'm hoping to go forth in my career to incorporate all this and tell more stories of all of this in multifaceted ways. Yeah.